It's time for another episode. This week we're going to discuss paint correction. And I know what you're thinking, I've already talked about paint correction. It's kind of true. I talked about why you may need paint correction in a video that I did previously, but this one we're going to actually look at paint correction and what it is and what it means and try to break it down to where people can understand it a little bit more. I've seen a lot of videos done where people try to show paint correction on a paint job. And while, of course, that's where it's done, it's very hard to get that across in a video or on camera because the clear coat that we're correcting is transparent. So you can't really see what's going on or how it really works, and it's very hard to replicate damage on one panel to keep showing you. So I came up with an idea, and I hope you guys like it. Basically, I'm gonna recreate the steps of paint correction on wood, all right? And I know you're thinking, how the hell are you gonna do that? Well, I'm gonna show you. All right, so first we have to damage our wood. And I'm gonna start out with, let's say this one. We're gonna start out with this one, and on our wood, we're gonna put what's called a rid in. So rids are random, isolated, deep scratches, RIDS. And typically you'll see rids that kind of go boop, boop, across your car in different directions. Maybe there was a rock in a towel when someone wiped it down. Maybe someone actually hit it with something. But to recreate that, I'm just gonna write on here with a lot of pressure, rids, okay? Rids. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one, and you'll see why very soon. All right, so rids. Next, we're gonna create swirl marks. So swirl marks aren't usually as deep as rids. They're kind of a slightly through the top of the clear coat, maybe like a micron or two deep. So we're gonna create swirls here. I'm gonna use a lot less pressure, and now my pen doesn't wanna write. We're gonna create swirls. Now we got swirls in blue, in case you guys can see that. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one here. Swirls. I know you're impressed by my handwriting. I know. All right, now we're gonna use this marker to create bird poops. Okay, so bird poops, acid rain, water spots, they all kind of damage the clear coat the same, where instead of it just being, let me write here, bird poop. And another one over here, bird poops. All right. So what you'll notice when I do my testing is that because this one actually has ink in it, it's gonna soak into the wood. Much like a bird dropping is acidic, and it permeates your clear coat. So even if you clean the top off, you don't get it soon enough, a lot of times the clear coat's damaged further down. So this makes kind of a cool example. Now, to make this make sense on the video, I'm gonna do some cutaways where you show me attempting different things. Then I'm gonna label them so you understand what I'm replicating, okay? So the first one we're gonna do is we're gonna replicate a all-in-one detail wax, okay? There's very popular, a lot of people think they're getting paint correction when they're really just getting a detail. And details aren't meant to fix problems. Details are meant to kind of put a Band-Aid on them, cover them up, make it look glossy for a little while. But the problem with the all-in-ones or like the one-step waxes or polishes, polish/wax, that's why it's all-in-one. It's a cleaner polish and wax. The problem with them is they have fillers in them. And so they'll actually make this look better than it's supposed to. The problem with it is it doesn't last because we're not fixing the underlying problem. We're only basically putting a Band-Aid over top that after a while is gonna come off, and you're gonna see all of those problems that you thought were gone. So we're gonna do a cutaway right now of me putting my version of a one-step wax to fix this or make all these little problems go away. Cutaway coming now. So this would be considered equivalent to putting a one-step fix-all cleaner polish wax onto your car. It doesn't hurt it, but it's not gonna last. So let's go ahead and do our one step on here. All right, so that's equivalent to a one step. I mean, you can't see the problems anymore, right? But let's see how well they would stand up to wiping or washing. And I would say this is very equivalent to after putting this type of a one step on your car, what it would act like. And look at that, the problems are coming back because they didn't actually go away. We didn't remove them. We just covered them up with something glossy that's a similar texture kind of. So this is exactly what would happen if you put a one-step cleaner wax on your car or a kind of fix-all spray or something. It's just covering things up. It's putting silicone fillers typically in, and it's going to wash right out. So now that we showed you the equivalent of what a one-step wax or a all-in-one cleaner, polish, and wax will do in equivalent of wood, now let me show you the difference of what a one-step, a two-step, or a three-step will do. So first let's do the one-step. So to make sense of this, I have three different types of sandpaper here. Let's put them in order. So this is a really heavy grit, it's 100 grit. This one is a little bit finer grit, it's 220. And then this one is a much finer grit at 400. Now, of course, you wouldn't use these on a car. They're made for wood. But I want to show you guys and get my point across. So first, we're going to use our 400 grit and see if we can fix any of these problems. So I'm going to go to the cutaway of that video right now, and we'll see you in a minute. So this is our 400 grit sandpaper. This is going to be the equivalent of using like a finishing polish or a very light polish with a light pad to try to fix problems such as these. These are going to be kind of hard problems to fix. Like I say, bird poop kind of permeates into the clear coat. Swirls obviously have scratched a little deeper in the clear coat, and rids are just super deep. So let's go at some sanding here, and I'm probably going to fast forward this so you guys don't have to watch me sand forever. All right, so as you can see, it did make a difference. And obviously, if I sat here for the next hour with that same piece of sandpaper and I kept flipping it over, I might actually be able to get somewhere. And it looks like it kind of took the rids out, but it really didn't. There's actually just a bunch of dust stuck inside here. These are actually pretty deep. So it definitely made a difference. This is very similar to what we would do on your car. I mean, you can definitely see that there is a difference, but in the sun, this would probably look a lot better if this was a paint job. You would actually see more gloss. But the problem is all of this is still here because this isn't heavy enough to get these kind of imperfections out. So on to the next step. All right, so now we did our 400 grit across there, and it really didn't make a huge difference. You could definitely see that it took away some of the stuff on top, but there's still definitely, you can fully read everything and there's a lot left over. So now we're going to try our 220 grit and we're going to see what that does to it. So this would be equivalent to if you did a one-step paint correction, or we just call it a polish basically on the car, it's definitely going to enhance the gloss. It's going to get rid of some really fine swirls, but it's not going to get the deeper stuff. There's no way it's going to get the deep wash scratches or those really fun cobwebs that you see in the sun. The one step's not meant to do that. The one step is literally to polish the top, take away any oxidation, real light oxidation, and bring that gloss out, bring the metallic out, make it pop. But the underlying conditions are still going to be there. So now we're going to replicate what a second step would be. So if we were to do a two-step, and obviously we would do these in a different order. If we were going to do a three-step, we would do 100 grit, then 220, then 400. Problem with that is if I do that in the video, we're going to get rid of all the problems before you guys see what each step does. So I'm doing it kind of in the reverse order so you can see as we go what a difference it does make. So now we're going to do our 220 and we're going to see how far that'll get down and what it's going to take out. And let's go to that now. So this is our 220 grit sandpaper. This would be equivalent to, say, a medium compound. Medium compounds are great. They're going to take out a majority of problems, or at least make them look about 80% or so, somewhere in that range, 70, 80%. Depending on which pad you're using, which machine, all makes a difference, but essentially a two-step correction, this would be step number 2. This would be the first step we would normally do, and we're going to try to remove as much of this as possible prior to then going back to, say, like the 400 grit or the finishing step. So I'll probably fast forward so you guys don't have to watch me sand, and we'll do about the same amount of sanding as we did with the 400. I think that's a pretty good example of what a two-step would be on a paint job with this many problems. Bird poops are always kind of a crapshoot. You never really know if they're going to come out. It depends on how acidic it was and how deeply it penetrated the clear coat. So this would be a really good example of that. I mean, essentially, there's no more of this left on the surface. This is just down inside the wood grain right now. Same thing with the swirl. We got, gosh, I don't know, what they call it, about 60, 70% of that. Okay, so are you impressed or what? So that took a little bit more out. It actually kind of got rid of a lot of the part where it said swirls, but there's still a little bit left there because I pressed a little harder in some areas than others, and that's very close to what a scratch would be on your car. There's really never any consistent scratches where it's the same depth all across the clear coat. So sometimes a two-step will take out 80% of a scratch, but not the whole scratch. And that's where a three-step would come in. A three-step is almost like a restoration, or you've got some serious scratches on your new car, and we need to dig deeper. We need to go in with a heavy pad, heavy compound, and really go aggressively at those scratches to try to level them. Then we would come back and we would polish that out and get rid of our heavy scratches. And then we would, after we do that, we do a really fine polish to bring the gloss back to the paint. So now we're going to replicate what a third step would have been, and we'll see how far that gets into the rids, the swirls, and the bird poops. Now, it probably won't take rids completely out because I want this to be realistic. And on a car, you're not always going to get all the rids out. It just doesn't work like that. When they're too deep, you've got some scratches that are stuck in there. So if anyone tells you they can give you 100% correction, they're probably 100% bullshitting you. You should really ask more questions. It's very rare we ever tell someone 100% unless I've already done a test spot on that panel, I can tell you for sure. We usually say we can get 80, 90%. If we get better than that, customer's stoked. If we don't, they don't think we lied to them, and that's why we do it that way. So you should really look for that when you do go into a shop and they start quoting you or showing you what they can do. Let's cut away to the third step, and I'll be back. 100 grit. This would be equivalent to using a super heavy cut compound and a microfiber cutting pad for sure, if not something a little more aggressive. So this is something we don't want to use on every single paint job just to use it. You don't want to do a three-step or a super heavy compounding on a clear coat unless necessary, unless you have a lot of issues like this that you really need to dig deep and get rid of. So let's see what our 100 grit does. Of course, I'll fast forward this for you guys again. All right, well, looky here. I would say that 90% of our issues are gone. So you guys saw all three, or actually 4 steps of what we try to show in this video. I hope I broke it down well where you kind of understand. I thought using wood was a good idea because sanding is very similar. Now, if you take a piece of wood and you go at it with 100 grit sandpaper and you leave it like that and you just throw a glossy lacquer over top of it, it's probably not going to look as smooth and glossy as you want it to. But when you go at it with 100 grit sandpaper and then you follow up with, say, a 200 and then a 400 and even go to like a 600 or 800, you have such a nice, smooth and fine finish that when you put a gloss over top of it or a lacquer or clear coat or whatever you choose to put over it, you're going to get a really nice looking product that is very optically clear and very, very smooth when you touch or look at it. Kind of like a dining room table or something. Same thing with your car. If we go at it with a super heavy compound, but we don't finish it all the way down, you're going to see a lot of that underneath any ceramic coating that we put on. And so it's very important proper steps are taken and that we don't just throw a Band-Aid over top that looks great when you leave our shop, but 2 weeks later you wash your car a few times and the one step, or in this case peanut butter, just washes right off and here's all your problems right underneath, right? I hope this video helped. I hope everyone's having a great week. If you guys have any questions or ideas, shoot us those messages. We really appreciate it. And I will see you next week.